These notes are to help you finish filling in your foldable. Begin by copying down all the labels for the front. When you get to the number line, it would be best if you used a ruler. I've split it so that there are 10 sections in between 0 and -1, so you're counting by tens. Once you're finished copying the front, you could move on to the inside. Each of these screens, you'll have a picture of the inside that has a star showing you where you're going to write each piece of the information. So the first piece that we're going to get will go in the first box, and that's where you're going to write the definition for rational numbers. A rational number is any number that can be written as a fraction. And for examples, we can have the fraction -1/3, that could be written as a fraction. Integers, any whole number, would also count. So for example, -6, because -6 could be written as -6/1 and have the same value. And you could also have any repeating or terminating decimal. So for example, 94 hundredths would also count as a rational number. The next box is converting fractions to decimals. So this is right over here across from where you just were. The example we're going to do is -5/8. In order to convert any fraction into a decimal, you're going to divide. Fraction bar always means divide. So if you want to put a division sign there to remind you, that's a big thing that will come up a lot this year. So we'll set up our division box. The top dog goes inside the doghouse, and bottom dog has to sleep outside. For right now, I'm going to ignore the negative sign and figure out what 5/8 is equal to, and then I'll come back and make the decimal negative. 8 is larger than 5, so 8 will not go into 5. So what I can do is add a decimal point to make this 5 0/10, and that means I need to move the decimal directly above. Okay, from here we know 8 goes into 5 0 times. Really important to line up your numbers here. And 8 will go into 50 6 times. Okay, multiply 6 times 8 is 48. And this entire example should go on the flap where the star is. Subtract and have 2 left over. We're going to keep going, so add another 0 to bring down to make this 20. Okay, 8 will go into 22 times, so 2 times 8 is 16. Subtract and bring down another 0. Okay, 8 will go into 40 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40, and we end with 0, which means we are done. Now remember, we had a -5/8, so we're going to make this -625 thousandths. Okay, our next spot is the third one. It is adding and subtracting fractions. You're going to write down your reminder that you need to find common denominators, and then we'll write an example. So let's do -1/3 plus 2/5. Okay, to find common denominators, we're going to rewrite each of the fractions, and we need to find the least common multiple of 3 and 5, so a number that both of them can multiply into, which would be 15. So we're going to rewrite each of those fractions with a denominator of 15. Okay, you're going to look at what do you multiply 3 by to get to 15, and in this case it's 5. We're going to do the exact same thing with the numerator. So we're going to multiply -1 times 5 to get a new numerator of -5. Okay, on the second fraction, we have to multiply 5 by 3 to get to 15. So we will do the same thing. 2 times 3 is 6. So now we have the fractions -5/15 plus 6/15. Okay, we're going to keep the denominators the same, so we know that that's going to be 15. And the only difference from before is now you might have some negatives in there. So we have -5 plus 6, which if you use your number line or your chips, you'll find is 1. So your final answer would be 1/15. Okay, next, we are in the fourth box on adding and subtracting decimals. And the key to remember is to line up your decimal points when you are adding or subtracting. Let's do -1 5/10 minus 1300. Okay, we can still use our subtraction rule, so I can still write this using keep, add, opposite. And for this example, I have two signs that are the same. It's both negative. So if you think about your number line, you're starting at -1 5/10, and you're going to the left 1300. So that means we're going to get a larger negative number, or a number that is more into the negatives. So we'll line up our decimal points. -1 5/10, -1300. If you need to, you can add a 0 so that you have all of your places lining up. And remember, we are adding them because they have the same sign. So going straight down, and your decimal is going to come straight down so that everything lines up when you're adding or subtracting. Okay, so your final answer would be -1 63/100. Okay, next we are going to look at multiplying fractions. So we're now in the fifth box. For this, you're going to multiply straight across. You don't need to worry about common denominators. If we had the fractions 7/8 multiplied by -1/3, your negative sign, if you attach it to the numerator, you can think of it as -1. We know our final answer is going to be negative because a positive multiplied by a negative is negative. So 7 times 1 is 7, 8 times 3 is 24. So our final answer would be -7/24. Okay, next up, multiplying and dividing decimals. We're now in the sixth box. You're going to multiply just like you normally would, and then you're going to move the decimal. We'll do the example 1 7/10, -1 7/10, multiplied by 800. Okay, when you are multiplying, it is not necessary to line up your decimal points. So we can write 1 7/10 and 800. Okay, again, not necessary to line up the decimal points. We're going to multiply 8 times 7, which is 56. 8 times 1 is 8. 8 plus 5 is 13. Now, if it helps, I sometimes think of a little fisherman up here in a boat. So there's the fisher, and he has a fishing pole, and he's going to cast out his line, and it's going to sink right down to the bottom of the pond or whatever it is he is fishing in. If you look at how many places the decimal is moved over for each number, this is moved over 1 place. This decimal is moved over 2 places. So if I add 1 plus 2, I get 3. And that tells me that I'm going to move my decimal point over 3 places from where the fishing line is. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3. Okay, final step, we're going to rewrite our answer, and remember we had negative multiplied by a positive. So our final answer would be -136,000. Okay, next is dividing fractions. So we are in the 7th box. And when you divide fractions, you're going to change it into a multiplication problem by multiplying by the reciprocal. The word reciprocal just means that you're going to flip your fraction. So if we have -1/6 divided by -1/5, we're going to rewrite it as a multiplication problem by keeping the first fraction the same, changing division into multiplication, and then for reciprocal, we are flipping the second fraction. So instead of negative 1/5, it would be negative 5 over 1. And now we can multiply straight across just like we did before. Negative times a negative is a positive, so our final answer will be positive. So we'll have 5 in the numerator and 6 in the denominator. So our final answer would be 5/6. Okay, and last section, when you're dividing decimals, you're going to convert your divisor, or the number you're dividing by, to a whole number, and then you can divide just like we did earlier when we changed the fraction into a decimal. Let's do negative 8/100 divided by 2/10. And we know our final answer will be negative, but we'll come back to that once we've done our dividing. Okay, the first number is the one that goes inside of your division box. So we would write this as 8/100 on the inside and 2/10 on the outside. Now, it's not going to work very well unless you change your number on the outside that you're dividing by into a whole number. And the way that you can do that, if we multiply this by 10, 2/10 multiplied by 10 is going to be just 2. So that changes the problem so that you have 2 on the outside. If you multiply by 10 there, you also have to multiply by 10 to the other number. So you're going to move both decimal points over. So our new division problem, we're dividing by 2, and the number on the inside is just going to be 8/10 because we moved it over. So 8/10 divided by 2 is what we'll divide to get our answer. Okay, just like before, we're going to move our decimal point straight up. 2 will go into 0 0 times, and 2 will go into 8 4 times. 4 times 2 is 8, and we end to see that it's a terminating decimal. Okay, and again, we had a negative divided by a positive, so our final answer would be negative 4/10.